And good evening and welcome to the webinar. My name is Rajat Sadana. I'm the founder and CEO of e-GMAT and I'll be your host today. Along with me I have Anand. Anand is a marketing manager at e-GMAT and he's going to be a co-host today. The topic of the webinar today is key strategies to scoring 760. This is what we call as a foundation strategy webinar in which we talk about how you can go and start your preparation given a certain background and what's the most efficient path that you can carve out to get to a high GMAT score. This is a free webinar. It's quite heavily attended. We have 106 participants in the webinar right now. I do anticipate this number to go to 130, 140 in another 15 to 20 minutes. So just to kind of figure out how this group is made up of, so what we call as the profile of this group as a whole, we ask a few leading questions. The first one's, when do you plan to take the test? So if you haven't responded to this one, please do so. I see a few more responses are coming in. And then the second question that we ask is, what is your target GMAT score? So let's look at this entire group as a whole. The two big segments that I see over here. The first one, although the biggest one, is those who haven't taken a date yet. Presumably you guys have more than 75 days before you take the test. Presumably you guys are not aiming for round one of admissions overall. And then a second big group, actually the second group has now become the biggest overall, is those who have their test in 46 to 75 days. That's about 37.7% or about 41 of you, or 38%. Then we have two similarly sized groups, I'd say. Those who have their exam in 31 to 45 and 16 to 30 days, and then we have very few folks who have their exam right away. And then the second question that we asked was, what's your target GMAT score? And again, the largest segment over here, the largest group, is aiming for upwards of 99 percentile. We have a very similarly sized group that's aiming for 730 to 750, and then we have a significant number of folks who are aiming for 710 or 720. A few folks in the 660 to 700 and the 600 to 650 bracket as well. Okay, and then let's kind of ask another parallel question since we have this. What is your current GMAT score based on the mocks, or if you've taken the actual exam? Where do you currently think you are? Got a few more responses. I have 70 responses to the current GMAT score. 86, 87, 88, 90. Okay. A majority of you don't, well, I shouldn't say majority, the biggest segment over here does not know what their current score is. It's about 27% of you. And then we have about the next biggest segment is in the 560 to 600. Then we have a fairly similarly sized segment in the 510 to 550, and 400 to 500 is also a pretty decent sized segment. We have a few folks who are in the 710 to 720, then presumably very close to that 760 mark. That's wonderful. And then we have a few folks in the 660 to 700 as well. In this webinar, we'll talk about how you guys can go from that 500 mark to that 720, 730. What's the most efficient path that you can that we can carve out to get there? Now, I'm going to go from what we call as the lobby, which is where we were in this webinar, into the presentation pod. As I do that, the screen is going to flicker in front of you. In about another 5 seconds or so, you should start seeing the presentation which says our logo e-GMAT, and then it should say next batch starts May 22nd, 2016. Select yes if you can see that, select no otherwise. All right, pretty much everyone can see that. That's wonderful. If you cannot, then just wait for a few seconds. The system usually, if you are in Southeast Asia, it can take a few additional tens of seconds to settle. Otherwise, if the problem still persists, just join again and the problem should sort out by itself. So, there's simply three parts to this webinar. In the first part, which is going to last about 12 minutes or so, we're going to give you a brief introduction to who we are, what is it that we do. That's number one over here. In the second part, we're going to dive right into defining your GMAT strategy based on where you are, who you are, etc., etc. Then the third part, we're going to look at executing that strategy, and in this we're going to talk about the focus on core skills. Okay. Now, as we talk about core skills, I'm going to talk about one problem that we will specifically address in this third part, which is what we call a score plateau. What a score plateau is, you start studying for the GMAT, your score initially improves, but then you put in countless hours, but your score won't budge. It won't go beyond a certain point, and that certain point could be anywhere between 650 to 680 score range, or 600 to 680 score range, I'm sorry. How many of you have experienced that score plateau? Select yes if you've been preparing for some time and you've experienced that score plateau. And if you just started your preparation, you most likely would not have seen it. It usually happens if once you put in about 60 hours preparing for the test. So if you've put in fewer than 60 hours, then I don't think this question is as relevant for you. So about half of you have experienced score plateau. So we're going to look at why we do that, how can we overcome it, and why enhancing core skills is important to overcome score plateau. Okay, with that, let's get into the first part. It's 7:08 a.m. my time in Phoenix, Arizona. We're going to do this part for another 12 minutes or so. So e-GMAT as a company, we're about 4.5 to 5 years old. We were formed in September of 2011. Our goal was to help non-natives ace the test. Since then, we've had upwards of 15,000 students from about 60 countries. We add about 130 to 140 students every week to our platform. And then there are two achievements that I'm very proud of, and I think my team's very proud of. First of all, over the last 2.5 to 3 years, we've been GMAT Club's most successful company. When I say that, what I mean is our students have posted more success stories than students who've prepared using any other course. And the second thing is, we account for 70% of all reviews by non-natives. And when I say non-natives, what I mean is someone who hasn't done his or her K3, which is 3rd grade to 12th grade, from USA, UK, Australia, or New Zealand. Even those who've done an undergrad from these countries but haven't done their schooling are still non-natives. I talked about GMAT Club's most successful company. I say this on two metrics. First of all, we are their most reviewed company. No other company has as many reviews as we do. Secondly, we have been the most successful company, and I say that when I compare ourselves to the traditional companies of the world as well as the newer companies out there. So why are our students so successful? I think there are three key reasons to the success of our students. The first thing is the way in which we impart learning. We have this wonderful learning architecture which we call as progressive learning, in which what we do is we make sure you start at the right point. We give you feedback every 25 minutes, and we give this option of path correction every 20 to 25 minutes. Essentially what we try and do in this architecture is we try and mimic what a private tutor does. We invest a lot of money in technology, and then this architecture is an outcome of that investment. The second reason I believe why our students are very successful is the way in which we impart learning. Everything that we do is beautifully audio-visual. What it really means is we not only engage your ability to read, but also your audio as well as visual cortex. It makes learning a lot more fun and a lot more efficient than books. In fact, what I tell people is spend 30 minutes on our portal and then spend 30 minutes reading a similar amount of content, or similar content from books. 5 days down the line, you'd probably remember 5x as much with regards to what you've learned from our portal than what you've learned reading a book. Not only that, you'd be able to apply a lot better. And the third reason why we're very successful is our focus on core skills. So we'll talk about core skills, we'll talk about how that helps overcome score plateau, we'll talk about how you can build them. And also every course that we have has this unparalleled focus on applying concepts, not just teaching you concepts, but how can you apply them in a consistent fashion and solve real GMAT problems. I talked about most reviewed. You can really see some of the stats over here. We were GMAT Club's first partner to get to 1,000 reviews, and we are the only one till date. Also, what I'm really proud of is how consistently our students have posted reviews ever since the new review policy has been imposed by GMAT Club. So what GMAT Club in October of 2015 is, they basically said, hey, if you want to provide a review, you've got to do one of few things. You either need to provide a valid score report, or you should have been an active member for upwards of 2 years on the forum, or you should have been very active participating in the forum, or you should have a valid .edu email address, which again, it's practically impossible to fake. What they wanted to ensure was that the reviews that are posted after October of 2015 are by real people, and those people have really benefited from taking the courses. Since then, a total of 402 reviews were posted till April. So this data is till April of 2016, so 6 months. And out of those 402, 209 reviews were posted for e-GMAT. And you can really see the number of reviews posted for a few other prep companies out there. So we accounted for about 56% of all the reviews posted. Not only that, another thing that I'm really proud of is how consistently our students have been posting reviews. So we did an analysis. We said, hey, GMAT Club instituted this new review policy. What was the impact in regards to the number of reviews that were posted because of this review policy? So to do that, we compared 2 time periods. One was the October to February 2000, and it's actually October to April 2015 to 2016 when the policy was in, and the October to April 2014 to 2015 when the policy was not there, which is the white bar graph over there. What we found was our reviews went down by about 10%. But other test prep companies were impacted a lot more. For example, for Veritas Prep, there was about a 70% drop. For Magoosh, there was upwards of a 50% drop. And then again, similar drop for other companies as well. So again, I'm really proud and really thankful to our students for posting their success stories. Now, we offer 2 kinds of courses. The first is what we call as a self-paced learning or an on-demand course. So any course which ends this with the word online is an on-demand course. It's designed for students who want to learn at their own pace and want something that's way more efficient than learning from books. Our online courses are proven to be 5 times more efficient than just learning from books. They're comprehensive, which means you don't need anything when you buy those. They provide excellent value, and I'll talk about that value later on. So examples of such courses: Verbal Online, Quant Online, GMAT Online, and all of our individual courses are part of the online package. Then we also have instructor-led courses, which we call as live prep. So any course that includes the word live as an instructor-led course. They're built on the foundation of online courses, and all live courses offer a guaranteed score improvement as well. So examples: Verbal, Quant, and GMAT Live Prep. So our flagship online course is Verbal Online. It's a course that is designed to help you ace the verbal section in 30 days or fewer. It includes everything that you need to ace GMAT Verbal. You get our SCCR and RC courses. You get our IR course as well. For those of you who are GMAT Club members, you get GMAT Club tests, which by themselves sell for $99. An amazing amount of practice. You get the verbal workshop, and you also get 5 full-length mocks. So Verbal Online is also GMAT Club's most reviewed course. In fact, instead of I think the number is, it currently has 500 reviews rather than 491. Just 1 second, guys. Yes. It includes everything that you need to ace GMAT Verbal. It includes our strategy session. So we help you with GMAT strategy. We help you with addressing your doubts. And you get the same progressive learning architecture that we talked about. Also, you get assessments that you need throughout your preparation. The other course that we have is Verbal Live Prep. Verbal Live Prep, as you can see, is built on the foundation of Verbal Online. You can really see these two columns are essentially identical. In addition to that, Verbal Live Prep also offers 36 hours of live instruction. Now, how many of you over here are retakers, have taken the GMAT at least once? And a few more responses. So about 42% of you, 43%, so around about 40+% of you are retakers. For retakers, Verbal Live Prep offers an unparalleled 4-point score improvement guarantee over your highest attempt. So fundamentally, let's say you've taken the GMAT once, you've scored a V32, we guarantee that you'll get a V36, otherwise you get your money back. Even when you've scored a V37, we guarantee a V41, which is 94 percentile on GMAT Verbal, otherwise you get your money back. There's no course in the world that offers such a guarantee. Not only that, Verbal Live Prep is the only course that has delivered on that guarantee. Offering a guarantee is one thing, delivering on it is a completely different thing. Over the last year and a half, we've had 3,600 students who've taken this course, and then we've processed fewer than 30 refunds. It's the world's most reviewed live course as well, so it has 451 reviews. We're very fortunate that we have the world's most reviewed on-demand course and the world's most reviewed live course. Not very many companies do that. And it's also responsible for the highest number of success stories on GMAT Club, Share GMAT Experience Forum. So how does Verbal Live Prep compare to some of the other courses out there? Whether you compare the duration of e-learning content, whether you number of live instruction hours, number of practice questions, the kind of guarantee and or the quality of instructors, there's no other course that come close to Verbal Live Prep. So who teaches Verbal Live Prep? 4 out of GMAT Club's top 5 rated instructors teach Verbal Live Prep. Here's how a typical batch starts. A typical batch starts with either a critical reasoning or a sentence correction course. So right now we have a batch starting tomorrow with CR, and it lasts for about 40-45 days. It ends with a verbal workshop which is an instructor-led assessment into where you currently stand, what are your strengths and weaknesses. It was an industry first that we released, and it's something that we do. So a few things to note, it's more comprehensive than any other course. It's designed for working professionals, so all sessions take place on weekends. And yeah, you can see the time zone translation. So with this, I've come towards the end of the first part of the webinar, which was an introduction to e-GMAT. There's certain key characteristics of every course, regardless of which course you buy. You get a 7-day money back policy. You buy a course, don't like it, let us know. We'll give you your money back. But then you get painless upgrades. You can start with an individual course and upgrade to the most expensive one. You only pay the difference. For those of you who have opted for or who will opt for live courses, you get the flexibility of attending as many batches as you like. So what it really means is, let's say you join the current batch, which is starting from tomorrow, and for some reason, professional or personal, you're unable to carry on with that batch. You're welcome to join the next batch, which starts in 20 days. Also, you get access to all the recordings. So we get a lot of people from defense as well as doctors and those who work on oil and gas platforms who make use of recordings. Also, a lot of people ask this. They basically say, and I see a similar question. It says, hey, you have these wonderful warranties for retakers. What about first-time test takers? So while we don't have an official warranty for first-time test takers, we do track your improvement. In fact, about 75% of all our customers are first-time test takers. A typical first-time test taker improves by about 10 points on a scale of 60 with regards to GMAT Verbal. Whereas a typical retaker improves by about 7 points on a scale of 60. Not only that, first-time test takers improve a lot faster. There's another question that I rarely see, which was posted a few minutes back, which is, hey, what's the minimum score do we guarantee? Pranav, we don't guarantee a minimum score. It's not a weird question. It's a very genuine question. I think it's because your score depends on the effort that you put in, and then the quality of the offering or the course that you follow. If you put in the effort, there's something that I will tell you. If you put in the effort, if you do the ability quizzes, there's no reason why your score is going to be different from the one predicted by a platform. That's something that I can guarantee to you. So, but just buying the course doesn't help you. You've got to do the course well as well. And our success rate shows there's no one else that delivers better success than we do. Okay, another question which is there is, does upgrade increase the overall validity? No, it just by the upgrade you basically it increases the validity of the upgrade, not the foundation. So with that, I've come to the first part. You can join once, and as you can see, attend multiple batches. I can share the course calendar for those of you who need it over here. Okay, guys, let's now go with the second part of the webinar, in which will help you define your GMAT strategy, personalize your study plan towards the test. Okay, one other question: can we use internet banking? Yes, you can. You can write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com. We have a means to help you with internet banking. So I want to do three things today. The first thing that I want to do is make sure I help you define your GMAT strategy. And when I talk about strategy, it starts at two levels. First is, how do you define whether how much time you should allocate towards quant versus verbal, whether you should study quant first and verbal first, etc., etc. How do you define your target scores towards quant or verbal? So that's the first thing that I want to make sure that we do. The second thing that I want to make sure is that how do you allocate time towards quant versus verbal? How do you define, when you've studied for sentence correction, that you've done enough of sentence correction and you should now move on to critical reasoning, reading comprehension, number properties, algebra, word problems, etc., etc. The second thing that I want to talk about then is core skills. So once you've defined a path towards your goal, you still have to execute on it. So we'll look at focus on core skills, and when we talk about core skills, we'll look at why core skills are important. If you want to get to that 750, 760 mark, or in fact even 700, and then what are those core skills? How do you improve on it? And as we go towards it, we're going to solve a couple of questions, one quant and one verbal question over here. I'm sorry, wrong annotation. And then once you've defined the path, once you've learned the importance of core skills, we'll look at, for those of you who have e-GMAT courses, how do you learn effectively? What are the various components of e-GMAT course? How is the course structured to mimic how do you execution on your strategy and core skills, and how should you make the best use of it, and how can you track your improvement throughout the course? Okay, I see a lot of questions in the Q&A pod over here right now, guys. I'd love to tell you about our courses, but I want to go towards the second part of this webinar. One thing that I promise you is, as we go towards, once we're done with the second part, we'll have an open-ended Q&A for 20-25 minutes. That way, all those guys who are here for the second part, they will get the value that they're here for. Okay, now let's get back. GMAT strategy, your personalized study plan, and I've used the word strategy a few times right now. And all of us know what strategy is. So let me ask a question, a very, very simple question. When you think of the word strategy, and I'm going to get that poll out, when you think of the word strategy, what is it that comes to your mind? Let me just give you the poll over here. So when you think of the word strategy, what is it that comes to your mind? This is an open-ended question, and you can post your answers over here. Okay, guys, don't post your answers in the Q&A pod. That's for Q&A. The short answer part, which is on the right hand pane, is the one that where I want you to post your answers. Where I want you to post your answers. I'm sorry. From time to time, you may hear me drinking water, so I'll just need that to keep my energy levels up. All right, we have upwards of 50 responses. So, some really good answers. Strategy is a plan to achieve a goal, means to achieving objective / goal, a plan of actions, a required approach, time-bound action plan. Okay. Someone said strategy is half of success. That's very, very important. Sometimes even more. So that's very good. You guys kind of have a very good idea of what strategy is. So essentially, when I talk about strategy, I say, it's a plan of action. So there's a sequence of steps that you do, which is designed to achieve a particular goal. There are three things that I want to kind of highlight. First of all, the goal part. A strategy is always goal driven. Then it's always designed. When I say it's designed, you just don't take someone else's strategy and really apply it to yourself. It has to be personalized. And then it is a sequence that comes out of it. You're going to say, this is what I'm going to do in step one. This is the efficacy that I'm going to achieve in step one. This is what I'm going to do in step two, and the corresponding efficacy, etc., etc. So that's something which is there. So if this is what strategy is, let's look at what is a good strategy. A good strategy is something that provides maximum benefit with the least input. Okay, when I say the least input, it doesn't mean less input. It means when compared to other options, you're talking about an input that is less than the input that you would put in with regards to other options. So maximum benefit with the least input. How does it do it? It does it by making sure that you capitalize on areas that you're strong in, and make sure that you invest enough time in areas that you're not as strong in. Now, with regards to the context of GMAT, and when I talk about benefit, what I am talking about over here is score improvement. Okay, it's not the score, it's score improvement, where you currently are versus where you land. Someone asked that question earlier, says, what's the minimum score that you guarantee? We don't guarantee a minimum score, we guarantee a score improvement, because as a test prep company, that's what I believe my job is. So if that's a good strategy, there are certain hallmarks or characteristics that come with a good strategy. First of all, it has to be driven by a goal. We asked the question, what are you planning to score? And the biggest segment in this group said 760. Now, when you say 760, you have to be serious about 760. You have to know what it takes to get to 760, the number of hours required, the kind of dedication required, the kind of consistency that is required to get to that score. The second thing that a good strategy should have is an analysis of your current situation. Now, let me ask a yes/no question, a simple yes/no question. How many of you, when you started preparing for the GMAT, for those of you who have already started, when you started preparing for the GMAT, you guys went to a friend of yours or a few friends of yours who've taken the test and said, how long did it take for you to take the test, and assumed that you're going to take a similar amount of time. So essentially, if your friend said, it took me 3 months to prepare and I scored XYZ, how many of you assume that in a similar amount of time, you're going to get a similar score as well? Yes, no poll? All right, about 45% of you have done that. Now, it's absolutely wonderful to have someone who's taken the GMAT, who's gone through that experience. But taking your friend's study plan and applying it, or taking a study plan even from the web or even from us, and trying to apply it in your situation blindly can be fatal. Why? Because of the following reasons. When you take a study plan from your friend and you really say, okay, this guy was able to ace the test in 3 months, that guy may not have as strenuous a job as you do. So maybe he or she can put in more time per day. That guy or girl may live closer to the office than you do, or may not have as demanding a spouse or a boyfriend or a girlfriend as you do. All of these factors, even though they may not seem very important, but essentially become really important when it comes to executing that strategy. So when you ask your friends and take a study plan and take the strategy, make sure you factor these things in. Your friend may be really good in quant and may not need more than 20 hours of input in quant, whereas you may need about 60 hours. So again, understanding where you stand, who you are, and your personal situation while defining a strategy is really, really important. Another thing that's very important is having good assumptions. Pretty much everyone over here is about 24, 25 years old. Essentially, you guys have had a good 18 plus years of solid learning history. If you've had that history, that background, you know how you learn, you know how fast you learn, how slow you learn, how much practice you need. Use that knowledge to your advantage. When I was in my undergrad, I had this friend who actually was a batch topper, extremely brilliant guy. The guy was a bit crazy in some way. Even though he was a batch topper, he would not study throughout the semester. 15 days before the semester, he would study for the test, and he would study like crazy. And he would study so well that he would top our entire batch. Now, that is a strategy that worked for him. Had I tried to mimic that strategy for myself, it would have been disastrous. So, as I say, you've had this 18 years of learning life, you know what works for you. Make use of that. Don't think that you're suddenly going to become Superman while studying for the GMAT. And then, once you put all of that in, create a plan factoring these things and then execute it. So essentially the takeaway that I want you to have is, a good strategy is something that is personal. It's something that you build, and it's something that has checks in place to ensure that you're going in the right direction. If it's not, it's really important to redo that strategy. Redoing that strategy can lead to, may seem to lead to a bit of wastage of time, but not redoing that strategy can lead to disaster and a lot more wastage of time. So, since we talked about strategy, I want to talk about another key term, which is what I call as percentile. Percentile is probably the most important metric when it comes to GMAT. How many of you understand what percentile is? Select yes or no. Let's get a few more responses. Okay, I have a couple of important questions that I see in the Q&A pod. First of all, it's about the recording. Will the recording be sent to all of you? Yes, it will be. How long is this webinar going to last? It's going to last for an hour and 40 minutes from now. How will you get the recording? You get it by email. All right. Thank you very much for responding. We got 90 responses. So about 80% of you understand what percentile is, and about 20% if you don't. So I'm going to give you a brief overview of what percentile is. And then, we're going to use this term for the next 30 minutes, talking about the importance of various things. And then I'm going to ask this question: did you understand percentile in GMAT context in this way? And then let's see what your response is going to be. So in very simple terms, percentile is ranking. Okay. When you talk about a percentile in anything, it talks about your relative rank, out of a population. When it comes to GMAT, there are about 250,000 people, give or take, who take the test every year. It's slightly less than 250, but for ease of calculation, we're going to assume that there are 250k people who take the test every year. So when you score a 760, you get 99 percentile. What it really means is that you're better than 247,500 of these 250k people. Okay. Or in other words, there are about 2,500 people who are at the same level or better than you. When you score a 700, you get an 89 percentile, which means there are, upwards of 27,000 people who are at the same level or better than you. Considering that, why is 760 such a coveted score? Considering the top 10 schools have about 5,000 seats altogether, part-time and full-time. If you get a 760, you can really see you are in this exclusive club over here. Now, but the reason why we talked about this is because of percentile. So you see how percentile is embedded into the score over here. But what you probably don't know is that in every aspect of GMAT, you have percentile embedded, and we're going to talk about how and why that is the case. Now, there's another term which you guys are very familiar with. It's accuracy. When you take a quiz of 10 questions, you get 8 right. You say my accuracy is 80%. It's the percentage of questions that you've answered correctly. When you talk about accuracy, it's an absolute measure. What it really means is that if you get 8 out of 10 questions and you get 80% accuracy, there is no measure of how you've done relative to 100 other people who've taken the same quiz. Percentile, on the other hand, is a relative measure. Okay, that's why the relative part over here. You can get 80% accuracy and still be a 20 percentile guy. Really important to know. There's another term that we're going to talk about is ability, a much more relevant term on the GMAT rather than accuracy. So what is ability? When you put it in any context in which we are talking about, it is your percentile over there. Okay, I have a question which says, when I say 760, it says, do you mean that you have a chance of 1% in general to score 760? Is it almost the same percent every year? Yes, so that's very different by the very definition. Yes, Shyama. So I won't say you have a chance of 1%. I think that's inaccurate to say. What I really say is 1% of the people score 760. Now think about it this way, why I say it's inaccurate to say. Let's say you've been, let's say you're studying in school and you've been among the top, in your class there are 100 students and you've been among the top 5 for the last 4 years. In this 5th year, to get the first rank, you probably have a chance which is better than 1%. You probably have a chance which is more like, 12 to 14% given your past history. So there is that aspect as well. But essentially what 1 percentile means is you're in the top 1% of all the students who take the test. Another question that I have is talking just about top schools. How much weightage do schools give to a guy with 760 than against a guy with 700? I'm going to show some statistic about this in a couple of slides. But coming back to this, on GMAT, your percentile is really a true measure, or an ability is a true measure. Accuracy, not so great, and we'll show some data. So we're talking about GMAT strategy. Let's build some more common ground. And this common ground, we're going to talk about how is the GMAT scored. So how many of you believe, and let me get the right poll question. How many of you believe that GMAT favors verbal scoring over quant? How many of you believe that score out of 800 is more dependent on your verbal score than on your quant score? Got a few more responses. I have 94 responses, 101 responses. I have 160 students over here in the webinar right now. A few more. How many of you believe that GMAT scoring favors verbal over quant? Let me end the poll. About 109 responses. And overall, 51% of you believe that. Okay. The reason why I say this is because I'm going to really talk about another poll question here, which is what is your strength? Is it quant, is it verbal, or is it neither? And I'm going to put this poll question, reopen the poll so that you can put in your answers. What is your strength? Quant, verbal, or neither? Five, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. Broadcast the results. So, with 60% of you say quant's your strength, only 13% of you say verbal is your strength, and about 26% of you say neither quant or verbal is your strength. This is a very typical breakup of our student body, by the way. You know, so fundamentally, we get a lot of people who are very, very strong in quant who join our courses. Now, remember, this is about GMAT scoring. It is about building common ground. And the question was, does GMAT scoring favor verbal over quant? The answer to that is no, it does not. Okay. Now, first of all, for those of you who know about e-GMAT, we are known for our offerings in the verbal section. I mean, no one teaches verbal better than we do. No one in the world does that. So if this were truly true, we would have been the happiest company out there. But unfortunately, that is not true. And the reason why I want to make sure that I emphasize that point over here is because we get these folks who are really good in quant. They take our courses, they do really good in verbal. In the end, they end up scoring a 720 or a 730. And when I look at their score reports and I ask them, so what happened? You know, you've got a V42, which is 94 percentile, but in the end, you have a 720. Why not a 760? Why is it that you have a 48 on quant? Or a 47 on quant? The response really is they didn't study quant, they didn't think quant was as important. So fundamentally, what it leads to is this lack of focus, leads to this unrealized potential. These are guys who are engineers, who are from IITs, BITSIANs, or really good undergrads such as Princeton University over here, and yet scored a Q47, Q48. The truth really is, when it comes to your score out of 800, both quant and verbal have an equal bearing overall. And I'm going to show some data. And this data is about 700, but essentially it actually applies to any score up to 770. So what you really see in this data is you know, to score 700, you can get a Q47, which is 68 percentile. So the number in bracket is a percentile. And a V39, which is 89 percentile. So basically you can score 700 if you do this. You can also score 700 if you get a Q50, which is 88 percentile, and a V34, which is 71 percentile. So essentially I crisscross my quant and percentile numbers, get to the same score. Now, you can also get 700 if you have a Q49, which is 79 percentile, and a V36, which is 81, or crisscross it and you get the same score. And this is true for every score from 580 till 770. Okay. What is the highest score in verbal or quant? They scored out of 60. The highest that I've ever seen anyone get is a Q51 or a V51. So Q51, V51 will get you to 800. So fundamentally, you know, focus on both quant and verbal when it comes to acing the test. Don't leave any section unattempted. So for those of you who think verbal is way more important, you probably have read about this on a certain blog, okay? And I'd like you to go back and read the examples that they give on a certain blog. First of all, you'd find all of those examples are based on a verbal score higher than 46, which is greater than 99 percentile. V45 is 99 percentile on verbal, okay? We don't have a similar score range in quant, by the way, just to even make that comparison. And for probably everyone over here, that is irrelevant. There are fewer than 1,500 people who actually get that score. And half of those blogs have data which is inaccurate. Okay. In fact, we are releasing a tool, this is something that we worked on, which will help you create that personalized GMAT plan, and that has all of this information built into it. So probably by the end of next week, you'll see that tool come out from us. So again, what's really important before you start preparing? It's really important that you define your quant and your verbal split. Define that target score that you're going to aim for quant and the target score that you're going to aim for verbal, because that end score out of 800 is an outcome. Okay, when you aim for that score out of 800, implicitly you're aiming for that quant and that verbal score, and you've got to decide on it. You can't just shoot in the dark and assume you're going to get a certain quant score, you're going to get a certain verbal score and get to that 800. So what are some of the breakout scores to get to 700 for a good applicant? So I'm going to really divide this group into 3 different segments. The 3 segments is very strong in quiz, someone who's a quant whiz, someone who's strong in quant, and someone who's not strong in quant. So essentially you'd notice something. Okay, I've categorized quant whiz as a separate guy. I've categorized someone who's strong in quant but not a quant whiz as a separate segment, because there's a distinct difference between these 2 people. And then we have the 3rd segment where someone's not strong in quant. Okay, what is the definition of strong? We're going to look at that precisely. If you're a quant whiz, you essentially are someone who has an ego about quant. What it really means is you want to do well in quant, not just because you want to ace the test, but also because it would really hurt you if you didn't get a a Q51 or if you weren't the best in quant, just because you've done that all your life. Okay, so if you are a quant whiz, you want to get to 700 or a 730, aim for a Q50 or a Q51. Essentially you're looking for an 88 to 97 percentile, and correspondingly you don't need to do as well on verbal to get to a 700. Okay, if you're strong in quant, you still are really good in quant, but you don't have that ego which lets you get to that whiz. Now the reason why I have separated these 2 segments is, once you get to a Q49, it takes a lot of effort to get to a Q50. The reward is rich as well, but the effort required is a very different kind of effort. Someone who's not a quant whiz but strong in quant can get to a Q49 with a lot less effort. Going from Q49 to Q50, the extent of effort required is disproportionately high. Okay, correspondingly, you'd have to do better on verbal to get a 700. If you are not strong in quant, then one thing that I would recommend is make your strategy verbal driven. Why? Because verbal, in terms of its curriculum, in terms of the competition, the curriculum is a lot more confined than the curriculum for quant. When I say a lot more confined, if you're not strong in quant, which means you'll have to learn a lot of topics in quant, the curriculum could be as wide as 2.5x, as wide as verbal's curriculum would be. And not only that, because of the extent of competition, it becomes a lot easier to score 90 percentile in verbal than to score 90 percentile in quant if you're not strong in quant. I have a question. Why are we targeting 700? Why not 760? Because 700 is a stumbling block to 760. You can target 760. The path, the strategy is going to remain very similar. The same philosophy is going to be true for quant as well as verbal. Okay, for 700 as well as 760. In fact, as I said, the tool that we are releasing will help you personalize that. The fundamental principle here with regards to strategy is make sure you capitalize on your strengths. A lot of people don't do that. You guys may think I'm saying this again and again, but trust me, I have seen people falter on this so many times that I think I need to repeat this. So the key question to ask is, why does it matter? And some of you may be asking whether your strategy is quant driven or verbal driven if you have to study both. 2 reasons. First of all, efficiency. If you're strong in an area, the improvement that you're going to see in that area is going to be 3 times faster. Okay, and when you see that improvement that is 3 times faster, and if you're done with quant sooner, what you're going to find is that if you're aiming for a 730, 740, 750, that confidence to get to that, is a lot more. So if you're already at 660 and you want to get to a 740, you're going to really see, okay, it's just 80 points, let me work towards it. Versus if after studying for 70 hours, if you're still at 600 and if your exam is a month away, you're going to say, oh God, I have 140 points, 150 points to cover. I don't really know if I can do this. Okay, so that's why leverage your strengths first. Does that make sense? Yes, no? No. All right, perfect. Thank you very much, guys. So there was a question which was there, which was said, hey, what's the value that that MBA schools put in on your GMAT score, and then how are they using it? So I'm going to talk about the importance of quant and verbal. I'm going to talk about the importance of GMAT score using some stats. There was an article which was there about a year and a half ago in Wall Street Journal, which says on B-school tests, Americans fail to measure up. Essentially, what the article talked about was that because of the high influx or the high number of Asians who are taking the test right now, it's become very difficult for Americans to do well in quant, essentially making it virtually impossible for them to score a 750 or a 760. Again, the importance of doing well on both quant and verbal on the test. So what it really did was, these schools started to ask for separate rankings for US students. And that's some very interesting implications for everyone, including Asians who are causing this. So here's an excerpt from the article. It says, to address those concerns, the concerns are Americans don't seem to be scoring as well. GMAT, which is the body that administers the test, in September of 2014 introduced a benchmarking tool that allows admission officers to compare applicants against their own cohort. Now, when GMAT released this tool, for some reason for the first 1 month, they did not put protections against it, so everyone could access it, and I looked at it and it gives some really good data. Filtering scores, verb, ing, outcome, and percentile rankings by world region, country, gender, and college GPA. So you can do all of this. So this is something that B schools are doing today. It's available to B schools today. Sarah Neher, Assistant Dean of MBA Admissions at University of Virginia's Darden School of Business, said she was among those who contacted GMAT for help. What did she say? She said, I need to be able to show my scholarship committee, which includes faculty, that this person is in the top 5% of test takers in his region, even though that individual might not rank highly against test takers worldwide. Okay, this is Darden, all right, and so there are a few things that you can see from here. When it comes to top B schools, GMAT plays a huge role. I mean, the people who used to think that, once you get to a 710, 720, GMAT at top B schools is irrelevant. That's no longer the case. The second thing is, you get a 720, 730, you say I'm a 96, 97 percentile, and so I'm pretty safe. That's no longer the case. Why? Because you're competing against others in your region, which means you've got to be really good in both sections. Okay. The other thing, something that we already knew but has been confirmed for the first time officially, is when it comes to scholarships, your GMAT score plays a huge role. I knew this in 2003 when I applied for my MBA. I took the GMAT twice just so I could get a high score, and I got 2 full fellowships. I did not pay a single penny for my MBA. So this is something that is really relevant for that has come out. Also, there's more data. Okay, there's data collected by GMAT Club. You can see this article over here, which talks about the fact that if you score 750 or higher, your chances of getting to a top B school can be extremely high. And there's this chart that they kind of created. So for GMAT score less than 700, the admission rate was 4%. For 700 to 750, it was 24%. For higher than 750, it was 42%. And you can really see Haas, Booth, Darden, MIT. I mean, these are top schools in the world. So how do you define regions? How do they measure region? That's a question that I have. They haven't told us. This is not. This is a tool supposed to be for B schools. So I think this is something that I'm going to get more clarity in a month or so. But essentially, if I were to, so in a month, I'm actually going to this meeting of admission consultants and with top business schools, where I'm visiting Harvard and MIT, and I'm going to be talking to Tuck and another 25 other business school admission officers. But essentially, they will look at where you come from. I think that's going to be the first factor. So where did you do your undergrad? And I think that's going to be one thing. Now, if you've taken the exam elsewhere, you may have a slight edge, especially if you've taken the exam in a region where not a lot of test takers do really well. A slight edge, not a whole lot, because they will ultimately look at your background. Remember, every student's background is very thoroughly reviewed when it comes to MBA admissions. Now, when I say a slight edge, what it really means is that, because you are from a certain region, you've taken the test from a certain region, your application may get reviewed more thoroughly if you have a 710, as thoroughly as someone from a 740 for a particular region. But beyond that, your application also has to hold water. Okay, I have a very different question, which is about the CAT exam, which is an Indian equivalent of the GMAT, if I would say. So GMAT is a world level exam. So how is it different from CAT? CAT's a very different test. CAT, I mean, excuse me. CAT's a test which is administered once a year. It's administered by a body that doesn't do tests all year round. It's not something that's who's a professional. That's a professional body. CAT tests a lot of grammar. GMAT tests a lot of logic. In fact, the most difficult questions that schools who take students based on CAT administer are very much like GMAT's critical reasoning questions. So when you go for your interviews after the CAT, the kind of question that you're going to get are going to be more like strengtheners and weakness. So I mean, GMAT's a lot more advanced exam when compared to CAT. When it comes to math, CAT's a lot more calculation intensive. GMAT is a lot more logic intensive. I mean, I will tell you that we get a lot of experts who work for us or who have worked for us in the past who have 99.99 percentile on CAT. When it comes to GMAT Quant, they struggle to get a Q51. Q50, yes. Q51, not. Just because the emphasis is different. So again, this is really good data. So overall, what I want to emphasize is there are really a lot of benefits of getting a higher GMAT score, and first, the biggest benefit is you get into the school of your choosing, which is, I think, when you think about the confidence that you have when you get into the school of your choosing, it's over a 10-year, it could have $500,000 worth of impact. Now, some of you may think that's a very big number, it's irrelevant, but trust me, having gone through this entire process, $500,000 is not a huge number. Scholarship. I mean, I think the biggest benefit is that you get right away is after admission is scholarship. This can be as much as 120K. So if you look at the time to get this return, it's huge. For those of you who want to be in strategy consulting or work in corporate strategy or work in basically investment banking, your GMAT score is priceless. Companies look for a GMAT score even when it's not officially mentioned. If you want to work for corporate strategy or strategic marketing, you go for a job interview, most likely the guy who's interviewing you is going to have a GMAT score. And if you have a GMAT score which is in the vicinity of his score, you have it on your resume, the guy already has a certain amount of respect for you. I personally experienced it while working in the corporate world. Trust me, that is priceless. And for those of you who want an alternate career, teaching for the test, it's something that is an option as well. So again, your GMAT score is an investment. It's something that, even though it's valid just for 5 years, it's something that stays with you forever. Okay. It doesn't matter how many attempts you do. It doesn't matter how long you studied. What matters is what your end score was. No one's going to ask you that question. Hey, did you study for 2 months or 2 years? What they're going to ask you is what was your score and where did you study, and then a few other things. So let's understand how the GMAT is scored. How do you ace the test? Why is ability a key measure? Okay. So let me ask you an open-ended question. And let me see. What are the question that is there is, let me hide these questions. What are the 2 things that you need to do? And again, answer strategically. What are the 2 things that you need to do to ace a computer adaptive test such as the GMAT? Two things. Five, 4, 3, 2, and 1. And the poll broadcast the results. Some very interesting answers, some very tactical answers. So score plateau, fewer number, since it's the number of questions is accountable, fewer numbers wrong at start. Time management and accuracy. Okay, I'm going to talk about accuracy. Lots of accuracy. Answer initial questions time, keep up with time. Answer initial questions right, I'm sorry, keep up with time. Do not leave any question unanswered. Prepare for higher level questions, accuracy. That's a really valid answer. I think one of the better answers that I've really seen. At ease to use computer instead of paper. Yes, you have to do that. But it's one of those foundational things. It's not, at very strategic level, but it's one of those foundational things that you've got to get right. So what I'm going to do is, you've answered this question, you've thought through this. I'm going to tell you how the adaptive test algorithm works, and then I'm going to ask you this question again. Okay. So, so to understand how the GMAT really works, and let me change my color. Yeah, we have color. Yes. So to understand how the GMAT really works, what we're going to do is we're going to look at the first 5 questions for 2 different students. We're going to call them student 1 and student 2. And then to do that, what we have over here on the y-axis, we have as the difficulty level of questions. What it really means is the higher you go on y-axis, the more difficult a question becomes. And this is the starting level, and you can really see this is your median difficulty level. So anything below this is basically below the median difficulty. Anything above this is above the median difficulty level. And over here you have the question numbers on the x-axis, 1 to 6. We're going to focus on the first 5 only. Okay. So case 1, user 1 over here answers the first question correct, median difficulty question, gets the next question which is of a higher difficulty level, gets that correct, gets the next question which is of an even higher difficulty level. You can really see that going up on the y-axis. Okay, gets the next question wrong. So question number 4 is of a difficulty level between question number 2 and question number 3. Okay, gets that right, and then gets the next question wrong. Okay. In fact, if you look at the trend, you can actually almost predict, not almost, actually predict which questions did the student get wrong or right. Now let's look at student 2, case 2. Gets the first question wrong, gets the second question of a lower difficulty level, gets that right, gets the third question of a higher difficulty level. So you can really see the difficulty level is truly between question number 1 and question number 2 over here. Okay, I'm gonna delete the annotations so that so it gets the fourth question, lower difficulty level, gets that right, then gets the fifth question right as well. So 2 students, 5 questions, right? So who do you think at the end of this is doing better? At the end of this attempt, who do you think is doing better? Let me ask the poll over here. Is it student 1 or student 2? Type in your answers. Okay, I'm going to give you another 2 minutes to, another 20 seconds to answer this. Okay, so let me broadcast the results. 74 responses. A majority of you say student 1. Okay, now a lot of you said accuracy when I asked that previous question. What are the 2 things that you need to do to ace the GMAT? In this case, both students have identical accuracy. Okay, someone says can't say because a student gets the next few wrong, he'll score low. Again, remember I said at the end of 5 questions. I didn't ask you to predict, I asked you to judge at the end of 5 questions, not predict at the end of 40 questions or 37 questions. Okay, so coming back to this, you guys said accuracy. In this case, both the students have identical accuracy. Okay, then why is it that student 1 is doing better than student 2? Why is it the blue guy is doing better than the other guy? Let's look at a few more responses. Both of them have answered 3 out of 5 questions correctly. Why is student 1 doing better than student 2? Student 1 indeed is doing better. In fact, if I were to really tell you, at the end of question number 5, if I were to guess, student 1's score is probably going to be 2.5x as high as student 2's score, 2.5 times. So student 1 scoring 10, student 2 is probably 25. 3, 2, and 1. And that's something which this is a very important question to answer. And there's some really good answers over here. One says higher range, tougher questions lead to higher score. More difficult, the more the weight. Very, very important. Difficult questions and accuracy. Accuracy is irrelevant. It's 3 out of 5 for both, but difficult questions, yes, because of the difficulty level of questions. Someone says getting the first questions right is important. Now, yes, he got the first questions right. The reason why I don't want to emphasize on that point as much is because when you have a mindset that I've got to get the first questions right, you focus just on getting the first questions right. And how you focus on getting the first question right is by making sure that you double check your answer, you spend a lot of time. You don't focus on the true fact that is that to ace the GMAT, you've got to answer difficult questions correctly. You know, you can't you can't improve your ability to answer difficult questions correct by spending more time on them. And that's not the takeaway that I want you to have. Yes, the first few questions are important, but how you get them right is not by spending more time. How you get them right is by improving your ability to answer questions of a certain level. Okay. So, given this attempt, and the GMAT works like this throughout the entire test, by the way. Given this data, given this knowledge, what are the two things that you need to do to ace a computer adaptive test such as the GMAT? Think about it. What do you infer from this exercise? I'm going to show you some more data on the slide to help you. So, difficult question to answer. Three, 2, and 1. So I appreciate all of those who put in their answers. I mean, this is a difficult question. I did not expect a ton of answers. I got 20. I'm very, very happy that I got 20 answers. And I've gotten answers, the quality of which is much better than the quality of answers that I got early. So which is great. So I again, so there's a guy who still says focus on accuracy. I'm going to talk about that. Improvability and approach. Answer the first couple of questions correct to take you to higher level score level. Okay. So again, let me ask you this. Yes, no question. Very simple. Was Turing 2 or case 2 as it's called over here even served a difficult question? Did he get a difficult question at all? Not really. Till question number 5, the highest difficulty level that he got was the median difficulty level, right? Right? Till question number 6, which is basically over here, the highest difficulty is the median difficulty level. Actually, let me just change the fill over here till this part over here. Okay. So, given this, the first thing that you really need to do is to make sure that GMAT throws difficult questions at you. Okay, because you can't pick and choose what questions you get. It's the question picking algorithm that runs over there that actually picks the questions. So the first challenge that you have is to get difficult questions. Okay, the second challenge that you have is to answer them correctly. These are the two challenges. Okay. Now, in very simple reason, from your knowledge, what does the adaptive algorithm on GMAT do? What is the purpose of GMAT being an adaptive test? What does the adaptive algorithm do? Or if I were to ask the same question in a different way, why did Turing 2 not get difficult questions? Okay, now I'm getting some good answers. Someone says it adapts to the response, right? It judges your level, it tests your individual knowledge and abilities, and it adapts to the response. In a sense, what it does is, and I'm going to close the poll. What it does is it gives you questions that it thinks you can answer correctly. That is as per your ability, right? It serves those questions to you that it thinks you can answer correctly. Do you guys agree? Yes? That's the whole purpose of an adaptive test. It's going to serve those questions which it thinks are a true measure of what your ability is. So, if the test, and this is a very important point, so listen carefully. If the sole purpose of the test is to serve you questions that it thinks you can measure, that you can answer correctly, then does measuring accuracy on such a test, can measuring accuracy on such a test be even relevant? If the sole purpose of a test is to maximize your accuracy? No, but you guys still measure accuracy to compare tests, to compare your performance. Accuracy is a very irrelevant measure on the test. Okay, that's a very important takeaway that I want you to take. And the reason I'm going to really say is because, what is required to acing the test is not just the first 10 questions. It goes into what goes into answering for the first 10 questions, which is the ability. And how you build your ability is when you are studying. Okay. So if you are studying and you are studying sentence correction, and you do a couple of quizzes and you get 80% right, you have that temptation to really say, okay, I think I've done enough of sentence correction. I must go on to critical reasoning or reading comprehension or number properties, right? That temptation exists, right? The scenario is, you're studying sentence correction, you take a few quizzes, you get high accuracy. The temptation exists to go to the next section. Why? Because you want to finish the course. At that point, I want you to measure ability rather than accuracy, and see if 80% accuracy, is that 60% ability or is that 75-80% ability? Okay, I won't say 80% is not enough. What I'm really saying is, don't have a measure of accuracy. 80% accuracy on easy questions is about 40% ability. 80% accuracy on difficult questions is about 95% ability. Okay, so very, very different mindset. So I want you guys to build that mindset of ability. Mithra says, but isn't our ability that is being measured dependent on accuracy? It is, you're very true, but accuracy of which questions? What is the level of questions that you're answering correctly? Remember the two challenges, and I think this is something that I can't emphasize enough. The first challenge is to get difficult questions served on the test. If you're getting easy questions served, then accuracy is irrelevant. As I said, a guy who has 80% accuracy on easy questions has 40% ability most likely. A guy who has 80% accuracy on difficult questions has 95% ability. And let me just show you some real data. Okay, these are GMAT prep attempts, not e-GMAT data, GMAT prep data for two different students. What you would rarely see is that the only difference in these attempts is this first two questions. This guy, student 2, got the first two questions wrong. Okay. Beyond that, if you compare their accuracy after question number 10, it's identical, not similar, identical, 71% accuracy. Both of them had, string of two questions wrong over here versus over here. Okay, but overall, once you discount the first 10, there is very little to pick from between these two students. Okay, this guy who got the first two questions wrong got a verbal score of 32. The guy who did not get the first two questions wrong got a verbal score of 43. What it really means is a verbal score of 43 is 97th percentile on GMAT verbal. What GMAT or what the test essentially told him was that there are only 7,500 students who are at the same level or better than you. A verbal score of 32, on the other hand, is 65 percentile. What it really means is there are 87,500 students who are at the same level or better than him. If you look at pure play accuracy, it's a difference of just two questions. If you look at ability, and if you were really looking at it from the eyes of ability, it's a huge difference. For those of you who are comparing these two attempts, you would really say it's very easy to go from a V32 to V43. I only need to answer 2 more questions correctly, but that is not the truth. This is GMAT prep, real exam data. There's nothing gets better than this. There is no luck. Someone who says luck, there is no luck in it. I'll tell you why. Both these students are e-GMAT students. This guy and the actual exam scored a V35. This test was a week before his test. He scored a 710, Q50 V35. This guy scored a V44 and a 760. There is no luck. Okay. If you see why this happens, okay, why did this guy, despite a lower accuracy, got very few questions, got such a low score? Let's map this on the model of the test. Our student 2, the guy who scored a verbal score of 32, let me actually try and delete some of this. The guy who scored a verbal score of 32 answered the first question incorrectly, which was a 50 percentile question, and answered the second question incorrectly, which was a 30 percentile question. Now, you guys tell me, if you truly are a 90 percentile guy, what is the probability that you're going to answer a 50 percentile question correctly and a 30 percentile question incorrectly? What is the probability that you're going to answer a 50 percentile and a 30 percentile question incorrectly, one after the other? For those of you who are very mathematically minded, it's going to be less than 1 in 10,000. That low. And essentially, I've told you the real test data. Both of these guys, different guys, the real test, they scored a very, very similar number as well. Okay. So GMAT truly measures ability. And that's something that you've got to do while preparing. There was a question which was there, which was a very relevant question. I'm glad that you asked this, Pranav. It says, during the exam, how to know I'm getting difficult questions? I don't think it's your job to measure that during the exam. It's your job to measure this during your preparation. Because if you are at a 60 percentile ability during your preparation, you're not going to get 90 percentile in the exam. That I can guarantee you, unless and until you're cheating. So it's very important to measure this during the preparation. So why is comparing accuracy across tests, why does it lead to inaccurate conclusions? Why? Because every time you do this, and this is something that those of you who are currently taking mocks would know. If you compare accuracy across mocks, and once you take a mock, the next thing that you do is you decide what to study next. And if you make that decision purely on accuracy, what will happen is you're going to keep on studying for about a month, and you're going to really see very little improvement in your overall mock test scores. Has anyone experienced this? They decide what to study next based on mocks, but you go from mock 1 to mock 2 to mock 3, very little improvement across tests, right? So bad data, bad decision making, bad outcome. It happens, and the reason why it happens is because you focus on accuracy. Arpit says, is it necessary that we get the first question of 50 percentile level? Yes. That's what the GMAT tells us. And that's, if you look at an adaptive test algorithm, that's kind of how it works. It's the most efficient way to go there. Start from the midpoint and then go up. That's the very definition of 50 percentile. Okay, and this is not something that we've made up. So till about 2014, ability was something that people talked about as a buzzword, and no one other than e-GMAT had defined this quantified measure of ability. Okay. We started looking at ability, and we offered a product called a verbal workshop in middle of 2013, in which we measured your verbal ability, and we measured your built up a verbal ability which was in sentence correction, critical reasoning, and reading comprehension. We gave you these 3 ability numbers. In October of 2014, GMAT started providing what we call as the enhanced score report. And what does the enhanced score report give you? It gives you how you get a certain score. So for this person who got a verbal score of 38, it's composed of essentially 3 scores. It's composed of a critical reasoning percentile of 82%. This is percentile, okay, or ability, not accuracy, which is a reading comprehension percentile of 64% and a sentence correction percentile of 85%. So what you really see is this verbal score is an outcome of these 3 percentiles. Okay. And once you know this data, there are a few things that you can do. You can really see, first of all, what is the area that you're going to invest most on. You can make a good decision out of it. So let's say your target score was V40. You could really say, I'm going to get to a V40 if I improve my critical reasoning to 90 percentile and let everything else remain the same. And that's what you would focus on. On the other hand, if you did not have this insight, you might end up focusing on RC, whereas the easiest for you to improve may be critical reasoning. So a lot of you have talked about the first 10 questions. A lot of you are thinking the first 10 questions are really important. Okay, and yes, there are benefits to doing well on the first 10 questions, but just by spending time you can't do well. You've got to have that ability. I have a question. What's the difference between ability and percentile? No difference. Ability is your percentile in that section. So if you have an SC ability of let me just go back to the slide. In this case, the SC ability is 85%. That is his percentile in the sentence correction section. What it really means is, out of all the people who take the test over the last 3 years, so I think it's about 740,000 students, or 740,000 attempts, not students. Out of the last 740,000 attempts, this guy did better than 85% of all of those 740,000 attempts. Okay. Similarly, this guy did better than 82% of all of those 740,000 attempts. That's what percentile is. That's what ability is. Ability and percentile are identical. Siddharth says, if someone starts low, can you score a good one after that? Yes, there are lots and lots of cases where someone has done that. Here is an example of one guy, but I mean, if you look at the GMAT tag on GMAT Club Share GMAT Experience Forum, you can see lots and lots of testimonials out there. So, what are the benefits of doing well on the first 10 questions? Okay, you get a higher score, you get a lower penalization. A lot of you really also said that GMAT's a test of timing. Here is a simulation that I'm going to show you. Okay, this is done by GMAT Club moderators. I'm just putting the data over here. So what they did was they simulated the verbal section. They also did the same thing with the quant section, by the way. They simulated the verbal section. They said, what if I answer the first 30 questions correctly and answer the last 11 incorrect? What score do I get? So when they did that, they basically got a V38, which is 83%. So first 30 correct on a trot, last 11 incorrect on a trot. Okay. Then I said, what happens if I replicate this in the middle? So first 17, 18 correct, then 11 incorrect on a trot, and then the remaining correct. Got the same score. Said, okay, let me look at this and say, what happens if I do the first 11 incorrect and then do the remaining 30 correct on a trot? 27 percentile. Identical accuracy, a difference of upwards of 50 percentile, or 56 percentile to be exact. If you get the first 6 incorrect, it's very difficult to go beyond 66 percentile. So you've got the first 10 questions are important, but if you don't have the ability, you can spend all the time in the world, you're not going to get a good score. So then the question really is, how the hell do you measure ability during your preparation? I mean, we've been talking about ability. One of the biggest challenges is how do you measure it, right? How many of you are thinking about how do you measure ability? Let's get a few more responses. So yeah, a lot of you are thinking about it. So the way to measure ability is Scholaranium. You know, in early 2015 we released a tool called Scholaranium, which is built on the foundation of ability. It has 10 ability quizzes for each section in verbal. It has 15 ability quizzes for quant. Okay. What it does is it gives you your SC, CR and RC ability, and not only that, when you get a certain ability, you can narrow down as to what's causing the drop in ability. So it will tell you whether you're doing well in subject verb, or whether you're not doing as well in parallelism or comparison. So essentially, what this does is it allows you to focus on the areas, and when you know what to focus on, improving that becomes a lot easier. Okay, so Scholaranium was released, it's just a year and a half old, and it is already the highest rated test product on GMAT Club. You can really see how it's rated. Again, pretty much every other product is 5 years old over here. It is one of the products that has the strongest analytics. We actually had our technology team work close to 7,000 hours on it, and it has some of the most amazing questions and solutions. And you know, we do offer a lot of free stuff in Scholaranium as well. So for those of you who are not e-GMAT students, you get 6 free ability quizzes in verbal and 5 free in quant, and this is out of a total of 45 ability quizzes that we offer in Scholaranium. So you get about 25% of the content free of charge for those of you who want to try it out. So with that, let's get to the last 30 to 40% of the webinar. Remember I talked about score plateau, and we'll talk about how we can avoid this. So we're going to discuss score plateau over here, and to do that, I'm going to ask you to solve a particular question. So let me get a quant question first, and then we're going to solve a verbal question together. Let me get the answer choices, reopen the poll. Okay, here's a quant question. It's a very simple word problem question. So take about a minute and 45 seconds to answer this question. I'm going to mute myself during that time so you guys can focus on it. Last 15 seconds, guys. Five, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. Okay. The next question that I have is, how did you solve this question? And the three choices are by making equations by number substitution or by using a formula. Five, 4, 3, 2, and 1. We end the poll. But 83% of you used making equations to solve this question. But 16% of you used number substitution, or 17% of you used number substitution. Now, let me ask this question. I can mathematically prove it to you that making equations is not as efficient as number substitution, or in other words, number substitution is the most efficient way to solve this question. Yet 83% of you used equations to solve these questions. Why did you guys do this? Why did you guys, let me broadcast the results. Say habitual, you're used to doing it this way. One of you said it's accurate. This is how I've been solving it ever since. Okay. Default thinking is GMAT is a math test, not that of logic. So essentially, you guys are right. I mean, I would just say this: if I were to solve this, I would use making equations as well. And making equations doesn't mean that you're not applying logic. You are applying logic, right? And the reason why we make equations is because this is what we've learned throughout our lives. And what we've really learned is the moment we start seeing a statement, Jacob is not 12 years younger than Michelle, what happens is our brain really thinks about m is equal to j plus 12. That starts to happen automatically in our brain. Equations start to form. Is that true? Right? We start to form equations subconsciously. We don't even have to make an effort. Right? So essentially what's the case? Your brain's wired to solve this question. Okay. For verbal, that's not the case, at least for most of you. And we need to create those pathways, those connections, such that the moment you see a verbal question, you're able to do this. By the way, let me broadcast results. 7 is the correct answer, but 61% of you answered this question correctly, which makes this question a medium level question. Now, let me ask another question. Let me hide these answer choices. And for those of you who need the solution, you can really see this. Now, remember we talked about core skills. The reason why you solve this question was core skills, and the reason why I have a math question was because it's a lot easier to show core skills on math. So before I show core skills, I want you to tell me what are some of the core skills that are required to answer a question such as this one. Okay, basic math, algebra. What else? Logic. What kind of logic? Converting sentences into equations. Yes. Attention to detail. Strong basics. I think these are a bit more, I would say, vague. These are a bit more vague than what I would like. So I think ultimately, if you look at the core skills required, you need to be able to work with variables, right? You need to be able to convert statement into equations, which a few of you said, relate them, and then solve them. Okay. Everyone agrees these 4 skills pretty much cover most of what you need, right, to ace the test. Right? As long as you do these 4 things correctly, apply that, to a problem, you should be able to solve word problems pretty okay, right? Now tell me one thing. What if the core skill that I lacked in was skill number 2, but the skill that you practiced was skill number 4? What would happen? If the one that you lacked in was skill number 2, okay, but the one you practice is this guy number 4, solve equations. You'd solve the question incorrectly. You'll be solving the wrong equation. You won't get the answer right. Okay. Even though this may sound simplistic, but when you guys face that score plateau, when 70% of you say you've faced the score plateau, despite putting in a lot of effort, this is what you guys are doing. You're working on the wrong core skill. You don't even know that you're working on the wrong core skill, by the way, but essentially you're practicing and practicing and not improving. Why? Because you're working on the wrong core skill. This is what leads to score plateau. As a principle, can you really see how this could lead to no improvement despite putting in effort? Can you see that? How working on the wrong thing can lead to a score plateau, right? So we're going to look at, so some of you may be thinking, okay, I can really see this in quant. How does this apply to verbal? How many of you are thinking about that? So say quant, yes, easy. What about verbal? How does this apply to verbal? Are there core skills in verbal, such quantifiable core skills that are there in quant? So we're going to look at that. Okay. So as a side note, a lot of people ask us, they say, hey, you have this company, you claim this success rate. You call it verbal for non-natives. Okay. Why do you have it? Why do non-natives need a course which is specially designed for them? Right? A lot of people say this. In fact, some of the other test prep companies say that is just a marketing ploy. There's no different than our courses. So I'm going to really look at this. Well, because English is not their first language, someone said yes. That's something which is there. Slightly different grammar that is there. Now let me ask this. So we solved this word problem, just to really put things in context. We solved this word problem over here. In which grade did you learn how to solve questions such as this one over here? In which grade did you learn how to solve this? Most people learn this in either 4th, 5th, 6th, or some people learn it in 7th grade. But fundamentally, it's either end of primary school or beginning of middle school is when they learn. Okay, that's what we call it. In which grade do you think natives learn reading comprehension? And reading comprehension not the way that you learned it, but kind of way more advanced. Okay. So I don't know how many of you were there in the beginning of the webinar. I mentioned that I live in Phoenix, Arizona. So I have an 8-year-old daughter, and about 3 years ago I was looking for a school for her. And one of the good things about schools here is they allow you to tour and look at what they teach their kids. Okay, so I was I was touring the schools. I toured the kindergarten, then I toured first, second, and third grade classrooms over here. And this is something that was very interesting that I stumbled upon. This was a photograph that I took about how they learn how to do reading comprehension. And I'm going to just zoom this in so you guys can read this as well. So what these guys were learning was how do you compare and contrast, how to figure out author's purpose, how to identify cause and effect reasoning, how to differentiate between fact and opinion, how do you make inferences, How do you get to the main idea? How to answer detailed questions? How to draw conclusions? Okay. The strategies that they were using were by making connections, by doing predictive reading, by asking questions why, by summarizing paragraphs, visualizing the situations. How many of you learned this in 3rd grade? How many of you did this in 3rd grade or even in school? I did not. In fact, my daughter, who is now in 3rd grade, okay, can precisely identify facts from opinions. She can look at easy and medium GMAT questions and she can really figure out when a subject is missing a verb. This is a 3rd grader. Okay, as I said, she's 8 years old now, and she can do that. I couldn't do that when I was in 3rd grade. Differentiate, have a precise definition of what fact is versus what an opinion is. Okay, so bad thing, you've got to have these skills that you need to build. Good thing, as long as you're logical, these skills are relatively easy to build. And then again, Americans have that disadvantage in quant, you have that disadvantage in verbal. I think in some way it's fair. So let's figure out the core skills in verbal, and to do this, what we're going to do is we will look at a bold-faced question. I hope you guys enjoy doing bold-faced questions because you're going to do that with me. So I'm not going to give this question to you, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to solve this question with you to a certain extent, and then I'm going to give this question to you. Okay, so here's the process that we'll follow to answer bold-faced questions. We'll first read and classify and understand how the passage is built up. Then we will create a structure of the passage. Essentially what we'll do is we'll figure out how the author arrives at the main conclusion. We call this the argument structure. Okay, in step 1, what we're going to do is we're going to read and classify each and every statement. In step 2, we will figure out the structure of the entire argument. In step 3, we're going to look at and focus our attention just on the bolded statement and figure out what role do they play. And in step 4, we're going to do the process of elimination. What I am going to do with you is steps 1, 2, and 3. What you are going to do then is step number 4. All right, excited? How many of you are excited to answer a bold-faced question? Yeah, all right. Now remember, the reason for this exercise is not to teach you bold-faced questions. The reason for this exercise is to expose the core skills. So even when you get this question wrong, and about 45% of you will get this wrong, about 40 to 45%, that's what the statistic usually has been, focus on why you've gotten it wrong. Okay, and if you get it right, focus on what core skills did you ace to get this question right. Okay, if you want to learn boldface, we have a boldface concept and application file which is a part of the free trial. Go look at that. All right, so let's look at and go to step number 1, where we're going to read each statement one by one and classify what it is. And as we do this classification, one of the things that we really do is we really look at each statement as a fact or a claim. We put it in that category. Okay, so let's look at the first statement. Stock prices of companies that exceed $100 billion in revenue, also called extremely large caps, rarely beat the market over a 5-year period. When you look at this statement, the author says this happens. What the author really does is he is showing or he is sharing an observation, which an observation is a fact. So this happens, you can't dispute that, it is a fact. Now let's look at the next statement. The next statement says it is commonly thought that this happens because the company is too big to grow faster than the overall market. Is this a fact or a claim? What do you think this is? So please answer in the poll above, not there at the bottom. Three, 2, and 1. Okay. Let me end the poll. Now, in the poll below, which is a short answer poll, can someone tell me what is the definition of a fact? In the context of an argument, what is the definition? Okay, a fact is something that must be true. Fact is something that cannot be disputed. Okay, yes, a fact is a mutually exclusive thing from an opinion, but that doesn't tell you anything, right? A fact is something that can be verified, that can be proven correct, something which in the context of the argument is written in such a way that that it cannot be disputed. Okay, I am so glad everyone agrees with this. Okay, why? Because let me ask the next question. In the context of this argument, can you dispute it is commonly thought? Can you dispute it is commonly thought? Can you say it is not commonly thought? The way this argument is written by the author. No, you cannot dispute that. Why? Because the way it's written, it's the author's authority behind it. When the author says it is commonly thought that this happens because the company is too big to grow faster, you can't dispute this part. You may dispute why this happens. So you can dispute this happens part, but you cannot dispute that it is commonly thought. I'm going to show you an example to explain this. But this overall statement is a fact. The underlying piece is a general belief or an opinion. Why is it given? It is given to explain this part over here. That why is it that stock prices of companies exceed why is it that stock prices of companies that exceed $100 billion in revenue rarely beat the market? 83% of you said it's a claim, and if this were truly bolded in a boldface question, you would make a mistake. For those of you still confused, let me explain this. And again, a fact is something, as you guys said, that can be unanimously proven to be right. Okay, an opinion is something that someone thinks. When you say it is 15 degrees outside, it's a fact. When you say it is cold outside, it is an opinion. It's your opinion or the person who's saying that. When you say it is commonly thought that this happens because the company is too big to grow faster, the question is, can you dispute that this is a common thought, that this is a general thought process, that a lot of people believe this? Can you dispute that piece that a lot of people believe this? Yes, no question. Can you dispute that a lot of people have this belief? What that belief is can be disputed, but what you cannot dispute, a thought is not a fact, but the fact that a lot of people think that is a fact. Is a really important distinction that you have to realize. Let me actually get in a notes pane. I'm going to emphasize that part again. And I thought I'd added a new note. Let's look at this. Since a lot of people over here are from India, if I really say the Prime Minister said that India is doing well. Okay. This is a statement. This is a fact. What is a fact? Why is it a fact? Because you can't say that the Prime Minister said something. right? You cannot dispute that. That is given to you. What you can dispute is whether India is doing well or not. Do you understand the distinction here? In the same way, if I look at this statement over here, so what you cannot dispute, let me see if I can type properly, is, okay, what you can dispute which is an opinion. Okay, there's a great question, which is, what if only the author thinks that that is a common thought, but it actually is not? A great question. When it comes to critical reasoning and the structure of the argument, and then I would want you to go through the premise and conclusion files which talk about the structure of the argument, there is something called authority, okay, and we call it author-ity, which means that what the author reports to you are given as facts. That's just because how arguments are constructed, and that is because that is how it works in the Western world. I know in Asia there are lots of instances in which you report something which is a fact and which is absolutely wrong, okay, but in the Western world, you know, you can make a claim and that claim may be wrong and you're forgiven for it, but if you state a fact which is incorrect, you know, you get fired for stating incorrect facts or for coming up with facts. So the structure of arguments, and this is basically what's going to happen with you also when you work in companies, you're going to really get a lot of facts presented, and then you're going to get a recommendation, which is a claim or an opinion presented based on those facts. Your job as a manager is going to evaluate, which is fundamentally the purpose of the evaluate question in critical reasoning, to evaluate, given the facts, does the opinion, does the recommendation, does the claim make sense? Okay, that's the general structure. So the way this is written, it is given to you as a fact. Okay, let me just give you another question. Let me show you another statement and see if I can really get the same pod over here. Yes, I can get the same pod. I'm going to expand this, and it's a very important distinction. If in the argument the author says that it is clear that Rahul's DNA was found at the crime scene, or the statement says and Rahul should have an apostrophe S. Oh, I did not copy. Just give me 1 second, guys. So the first statement, it is clear, it is a fact, not disputable. Okay, the first statement is not disputable, it's a fact. When the author says don't worry about the accuracy of this, okay, this is a fact. In this case, in the second statement, the fact is that now whether the report is truthful or not is up for debate. Do you understand the difference here? So the way it's written matters. The second part, the Rahul's DNA was found at the crime scene, that part is disputable. The fact that it's stated in the report is not disputable. Okay, and that is the core skill aspect, one of the core skill aspects that I'm talking about. By the way, if you attend the critical reasoning free session next week, you're going to really get a lot more clarity on this. And if you do go through the free trial files. So the overall is a fact, the underlying part is a general belief or a claim or an opinion to explain the first fact. Next statement starts with however. However is a contrast word, really important when you're reading critical reasoning arguments. However, studies show that ELCs that provide relative pronouns, really important in critical reasoning. Why? Because they have a segmentation impact. Okay. However, studies show that ELCs that provide higher return than the market over a 5-year period, a majority of them are run by their founders. Okay. So understand the segmentation impact over here. Studies show what that ELCs that provide. So we're not talking about all ELCs. We are talking about this group of ELCs, this select group of ELCs that provides higher return than the market over a 5-year period. And there is a characteristic of that group that a majority of them are run by their founders. Okay. So two facts over here. First of all, author mentions that exceptions to statement 1 exists. Okay. And again, and the second thing, a majority of them are run by their founders is something that the studies show. It is a characteristic of those exceptions. Then we have this piece over here. Since most ELCs are run by professional management and that professional management is inherently risk averse, so we got two facts over here. One is we didn't know most ELCs are run by professional management, and we didn't know that professional management is inherently risk averse prior to this. The study's findings strongly suggest that the real reason why most ELCs don't beat the market is not that they're too big to grow, but rather that they're run by professional management that is too risk averse. What is this statement? Very important statement in the argument. What is this statement? It is the overall conclusion. It is the overall conclusion. It is the conclusion of the author. And remember, a conclusion is never a fact. It is always an opinion, a claim. By definition, a conclusion is disputable. Right? If you think about it, this is author's opinion, right? And it's also the main conclusion of the argument. If you have problem defining this, look at the premise and conclusion files. Sign up for the critical reasoning webinar. So let's look at the analysis of the argument. We're going to look at the structure of the argument. We looked at classifying every statement. Let me ask this. Are you guys getting this? Is this something that's useful? Okay. Remember the whole purpose, core skills. So we're going to look at 3 statements over here. And thank you very much for the feedback. So we're going to look at 3 statements. The first statement that we know is the author's conclusion. Now the statement with since most ELCs are run by professional management that is inherently risk averse, what I want you to tell me is what is the relationship between this statement and I'm going to actually first get in the poll question, then I'm going to ask you the question. Why do I not have the poll question? I have the poll question. Thank you. So the statement with since, does it support or does it refute the main conclusion? Does it go in the same direction as the main conclusion or does it go against the main conclusion? Does it support means strengthening the main conclusion, making the main conclusion more believable? Weakening or refuting means it reduces the efficacy of the main conclusion. So does the presence of this statement increase your belief in this statement, or does it reduce your belief in this statement? Five, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll and broadcast the results. So 80% of you say it supports, and it does indeed support. A few things. Premise indicator, sense of the premise indicator. But the very fact that the information provided in this says, since most ELCs are run by professional management that is inherently risk averse. So this fact provides us information based on which the risk averseness nature, based on which the author draws his conclusion that the study's findings strongly suggest that the real reason why most ELCs don't beat the market is not that they're too big to grow, but rather that they're run by professional management that is too risk averse. This part is picked up from this statement over here. Okay, the author draws his conclusion by picking up information from this statement. If this information were not available, the author's conclusion would not be as strong. Is that clear? If you remove the fact that most ELCs are that run by professional management and that professional management is inherently risk averse, the author's conclusion becomes not as believable. Okay. Now we're going to look at statement number 3. Statement number 3 says a majority of them are run by their founders, right? And it talks about the ELCs that beat the market over a 5-year period. Does it support the main conclusion, or does it go against the main conclusion? Yes, no. Does it support or go against? Don't put the answer in the short answer poll. Does statement number 3 over here, I'm going to highlight that particular statement. Does this entire piece of information, does it support or go against this entire piece, the main conclusion? Support, refute. Important question. Take another 15 seconds. Three, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. 44% of you say it supports the main conclusion. You guys are absolutely correct. Those who say it goes against the main conclusion, you're wrong. I'm going to share a litmus test about support and refute. And this is a core skill, by the way. This is what's tested on the test. So a very simple litmus test comes from the definition of support versus refute, or strengthen versus weaken. A strengthener makes the conclusion more believable, which means the information present in a strengthener increases your belief in the conclusion. So the litmus test to figure out whether a statement supports or refutes a conclusion is to remove the statement from the argument. And when you say you remove the statement from the argument, you remove the information provided in that statement from the argument, and then ask this question. After removing that piece of information, is the conclusion more believable or less believable? So let's look at this. The conclusion over here is that ELCs are not too big to grow, they can grow faster. The second piece of the conclusion is the reason why a lot of ELCs, or a majority of ELCs, grow slow today is because they are run by conservative management. Is this conclusion clear to everyone before I go towards the reasoning? It's really important that this conclusion be clear to everyone. Okay. Now, when the author makes this first part over here, this first part of claim in its conclusion, ELCs are not too big to grow, they can grow faster. What is the basis of that claim? Why is the author able to make that claim? What piece of information in the argument does the author use to support that claim? What fact? The given fact for whom? For which group? For the companies run by founders which grow fast, right? You guys are absolutely right, those of you are answering that. So this entire first piece is based on this evidence, which is this statement that we are evaluating, evidence that ELCs can indeed grow faster when run by their founders. So if you remove this statement, what happens to this part of the conclusion? It is significantly weakened when you remove the statement over here. Then you have no example of ELCs running growing faster than the market. Does the first part of the conclusion even sound credible? If you remove the founders example, does the first part of conclusion sound credible? No, right? The first part does not sound credible if you remove the example. So, if the absence of a statement makes the conclusion more believable, the presence of that statement, less believable, I'm sorry. If the absence of a statement makes this conclusion less believable, then the presence of a statement makes the conclusion more believable. Or in other words, that statement did strengthen the conclusion. Okay. Hopefully you'll make fewer mistakes with this. First statement, as I said, was an observation or a fact that was presented to you, and the second statement, this part is the general belief about ELCs. The overall statement is a fact. This part, the underlined part, is the general belief about ELCs. Now, again, difficult question. Now, let's do the pre-thinking. Okay. So what is boldface 1? Boldface 1 was a majority of them are run by their founders. Is a characteristic of the company that buck the trend. Okay. It is also a fact provided to support the author's conclusion. What is boldface 2? Is actually the reason for the observed trend. Right. This is the main conclusion of the argument. It is also the alternate explanation that the author favors means believes in, for the observation regarding ELCs. Now, remember this. The author does not go against this statement. The author is merely trying to explain the statement. Okay. Now take a step back. Look at boldface 1 and boldface 2, because this is where my role ends and this is where your role starts. You have to choose the right answer choice. So is boldface 1 and boldface 2 absolutely clear to you? What are they doing? Yes, no? Let me get a few more yeses, guys. I am the one who's conducting the webinar. You guys shouldn't be tired. Okay. So with that, you have the answer choices. You have the poll question over here. You have to tell me you have about 2 minutes to pick up the right answer choice. Most of the work was done, so 2 minutes. Last 15 seconds, guys. Get those answers in. Five, 4, 3, 2, and 1. Let me end the poll. Okay. And let me ask the question. How are the answer choices? How are the answer choices? Confusing, easy, clear, close, very competitive. This is a 650 level question. This is not a 700 level question yet. And about half of you answered this correctly. I said between 40 and 45, I think, because a lot of you haven't started preparing. So choice C, the correct answer, half of you answered it correctly. Choice D, the next close answer. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to analyze each of these choices, and we're going to really figure out why choice C is the correct answer, and then we're going to go and evaluate the core skills that were essential to answering this question correctly. Okay, we're going to start with choice A. Choice A says the first is a claim. Remember, the first says a majority of them are run by their founders. Is the first a claim? We did that analysis. What was boldface? This is a fact, right? So that part is wrong. Then it says the accuracy of which is at issue in the argument. Is the accuracy of first, do we dispute that a majority of them are run by their founders? No, we don't dispute that statement. Both of which is wrong, which makes choice A absolutely wrong. It's really good that only 2 of you marked this correctly. Hopefully, you guys know why that is the case. Now let's go to choice E. E for the elephant. Okay. E says the first provides evidence to refute an explanation that the argument favors. What is another word for an explanation that the argument favors? This thing in the rectangle. Can someone come up with another word? What is another word for this part? An explanation that the argument favors. It is the conclusion. An explanation is always a claim, and something that the argument favors is a conclusion. Remember, when you say an explanation, you're explaining something. You're justifying something that goes into the opinion category. Okay, so this is the conclusion, and an explanation that the argument favors 9 out of 10 times is going to be the main conclusion, unless and until there are 2 claims in the argument. So what we're talking about is the first provides evidence to refute them according to choice C. The first provides evidence, and evidence is okay, a fact is evidence, okay, to refute the main conclusion. Does the first go against the main conclusion, guys? Does the first go against the main conclusion? No, it does not. Okay, this part is wrong, and choice E consequently is wrong as well. Yeah, no, not but support, it supports. Okay, so choice A, choice C are out. Let's look at choice D, very popular choice. 27% of you have marked this. This is an incorrect choice. Let's see why it's incorrect. First of all, congratulate yourself if you were able to narrow it down to C and D, because I think you have some core skills in place, but also then you have this one very missing core skill, which again, if you get to, you're going to get this answer right. The sad thing about GMAT is there are no partial points. So then let's see. The first is evidence. Evidence is okay. What kind of evidence? That has been used to support something. Let's look at what that something is. An explanation that the argument challenges. What does the argument challenge? Can you type in what does the argument challenge? What explanation does the argument challenge? Think about it, those of you. ELCs rarely beat the market, or ELCs are too big to grow. well, really beat the market as a fact, but what it challenges that ELCs are too big to grow faster than the overall market. It's written right here, right? This is the explanation that the argument challenges. Now answer this question and answer this question, and I'm going to highlight this using a rectangle. And I'm going to really see if I can put in a blue border color. Does the first support ELCs are too big to grow? Remember, the first is provides data which goes against ELCs being too big to grow. The first says a majority of those companies are run by their founders. Does it support ELCs are too big to grow? No, it goes against it. It provides a data point that really proves that ELCs are not too big to grow. Here is a data point. Here's an evidence where ELCs have grown faster than the overall market. This part is wrong, which makes choice D wrong. Is that clear to those 27%? Who marked choice D as the correct answer? Okay. Please go over it again. Alright, I will go over it once again. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove all the other annotations so that we can really move this out over here. The key piece to understand is what is an explanation that the argument challenges, and the explanation that the argument challenges is you'll see what I'm writing. Okay, the explanation that the argument challenges is ELCs are too big to grow. You have to understand that part. Okay, what does the first say? The first says a majority of them are run by their founders. Okay, when you look at this, a majority of them are run by their founders. It provides data point about companies that goes against this explanation, that says here is evidence that ELCs can grow faster than the market, or here is evidence to say that ELCs are not too big to grow. So if that's what the first does, then it cannot support ELCs are too big to grow, which makes D wrong. Okay, I hope it's clear now. Otherwise, you can listen to the recording. Alright, then let's go to the next part over here. The choice C, which is the correct, the first is evidence, factors evidence that has been used to support something. What? An explanation that the argument favors. Yes, that's the main conclusion. We already saw that over here. If you remember, an explanation that the argument favors is the main conclusion, support is okay, and the second is that explanation. All parts of this are correct. So this is correct, this is correct, this is correct, as well as this, which makes choice C correct. Is that clear, guys? 50% of you got it right, the others did not. Hopefully you now know why you did not. But remember, as I said, the focus of this question, core skills, not whether you got it right or wrong. Okay. So we have all of this in textual form as well. So for those of you who get the PDF towards the end, you can see that as well. But let's look at the core skills. These are the 4 core skills we are likely to see in boldface questions. Okay, what is the statement? Classification is fact, belief, and you saw that in action, right? Observation, principle. How does it relate to the main conclusion and supporting or refuting? How does it relate to the other boldface statement? And then the evaluation of the answer choices. Now, take a step back and ask yourself, where did you make a mistake? Okay, where did you make a mistake? And I'm going to really put in a poll over here and tell me, where did you make a mistake? Let's get a few responses. I have So is it core skill 1, core skill 2, core skill 3, core skill 4? And you know, there can be multiple core skills as well. And that where you made a mistake. But again, you've got to really focus on one, nail that, then focus on the other, nail that, and so on and so forth. So you can really see different people have made a mistake at different points. But here is something which I think you all will agree with. Once you fix those core skills, your ability to answer bold-faced questions is going to go up. Right? Once you improve on those core skills, you'll be better equipped to answer bold-faced questions. Right? So now you have a target on what to work on. And when you have a target on what to work on, you guys can definitely work on it. And trust me, to build this is about 1 hour of effort. To build this is about 2 hours of effort, and not only improves your ability in bold-faced questions, but also improves your ability in general in any argument-based questions. Okay. Most natives already possess these skills. So, when you're thinking about a preparation, the key thing that you need to answer is, first of all, what resources you're going to use and how much time that are you going to allocate. If you need more time, figure out and build more time. And you may have to talk to your wife, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, your boss, or anyone else who's there in your life. Some of you don't have boyfriends, girlfriends, and just have friends. You've got to even talk to them to make sure that they understand that on the weekend you'd be spending more time studying rather than spending time with them. That's really important to open up time. And make sure you have vacation days, because you will need a few of them. Then define a score split. Define allocation, define areas where you're going to put in major effort. It's really important to know those. Okay. Figure out the resources that you need. A lot of people think they're going to solve the OGAs. The test will not happen with 99% of you. OG is a practice book. It has terrible solutions. It doesn't teach you how to solve questions. It teaches you what is right, what is not how to get there. Focus on building your core skills. And then measure everything. You know, data-driven decision making is amazingly powerful. It can have a plus 50, plus 60 points improvement on your score. It can also take as many as 50 to 60 hours off your prep, which is huge. Use data to isolate where you need to work on. That's amazingly important. So with that, I'm towards the last 10 minutes of this session, where we'll talk about how to make the most of e-GMAT courses. Okay. So if you think about and if you recap, you remember this thing where we talked about GMAT and ability, right? Remember the screen over here? Remember this, that GMAT tests ability. So let's understand what kind of ability does GMAT test and how is ability built into the fabric of the GMAT. Okay, so we're going to understand that, and we're going to really look at how the course is structured. So how do you get a good score on the GMAT? Everyone worries about the score out of 800, but the score out of 800 is composed of quant and verbal scores. When we looked at the score splits for 700, 730, we looked at how it was composed of verbal and quant scores. The verbal and quant scores, even though they're graded out of 60, they're always out of 800. Percentile is embedded into that fabric of the test. The verbal score out of 60 is dependent on 3 scores. You know, your SC ability, your CR ability, and your RC ability. And the quant score is built on 5 abilities: number properties, algebra, word problems, geometry, and then miscellaneous topics, which are sets, PNC, probability, etc., etc. So essentially, when you think about GMAT, what really is true about this is
that acing the GMAT is not rocket science. It's not just you've got to prepare, go take a mock test and hope you prepared well. Acing the GMAT is a very measurable exercise, okay, because of all these abilities is over there. The second thing is, if you measure this ability at this grassroots level, if you tell me this is a CR, RCSC ability, this is your number properties, algebra, and so on, I can almost predict that, assuming you can sit through that 4-hour test, what you're going to really do. So preparing for the GMAT doesn't have to be a shot in the dark. It can be a very predictable exercise, and that's kind of what we strive to do. Okay, a lot of people ask us this question. I really say, hey, what's the average score for your students? And I mentioned this earlier. As I said, what I care about is the score improvement. It gives me as much pleasure to help a guy who started at 400 get to 600 as it does to help a guy who starts at 600 to get to 760. Okay. An average e-GMATer improves by about 65 points on GMAT verbal and 35 points on quant. Okay. We track this improvement, we guarantee this improvement. And we give you tools to measure this improvement overall. Now, you may go on GMAT Club and really see that other companies have a slightly higher average score improvement, but that's when you look at the number of reviews and say, hey, this company has been in the business for 7 years and they have 150 reviews, versus we have been in the business for fewer than 5 years and we have upwards of 1,000 reviews. We track this, we guarantee this. Most of the other guys don't do that. Okay. So, but what leads to that 150 point score improvement? Because a lot of people also improve by 150. In fact, our highest score improvement has been about 370 points. It's you. It's how you use the resources that we provide to you. It's how you leverage experts. Okay. Now, I have a question. Do you mean by 65 points on a scale of 60 or 51? It's 65 points on a scale of 800. I know there's no 5 points, but we need to do the average to get to that 5 points. So on a scale of 60, the average score improvement for first time test takers for verbal is about 10 points. So if you start at a V30 and you're a first time test taker, V40, the average score improvement for quant is about 7 to 8 points. Remember, a 1 point increment is about 10 points. So Pranav says average will paint a different picture. What's the deviation and improvement? Pranav, here is something, the stat that I shared earlier on in the presentation is with verbal live prep. We offer a 4-point score improvement guarantee. Okay, and upwards of 99% of our students do that. We have had fewer than 1% refunds. That hopefully tells you the standard deviation. So all of you have a good question, by the way, really good question. I like those insightful questions. So let's look at the architecture of a traditional test prep, and then I'm going to really look at how e-GMAT is architected, and it's really important for you to understand. When you think about a traditional test prep, this is how a traditional test prep works. You join a test prep company, you get a bunch of books. Then you go to a classroom, you attend classroom sessions, and then you take assessments. This is essentially what happens in a test prep. Now, there are some amazing books out there. The problem with books is that as an offering, regardless of the quality of instruction, quality control with books is very difficult. Unless and until you're a super diligent student, you can't do quality control. When 1,000 people go through the books, they learn to 1,000 different degrees, but the problem is books don't tell them that they've learned to 1,000 different degrees. There is no means of course correction over there. Okay. Then you go into a classroom session. In a classroom session, there are a few things that happen. First of all, it's very heavily dependent on the quality of instructor. Now, there are some good instructors out there, but even when that is the case, given the tools that are there in a typical classroom, It's very difficult to track the performance of a student. It's very difficult to actually see whether the student is ready to perform in a classroom or not. And then it's very difficult to track whether the student is engaged in a classroom or not. Okay. When we do our classroom sessions with our live courses, we have the tools to do that. We actually can figure out within 5 minutes of you joining whether you're prepared for that session or not. And then when it comes to test, you get very limited integration with overall where you've gone wrong. So essentially, when you think about foundation, application, and evaluation, there are multiple areas where people just drop out. When you think about how does this architecture align with that of the true GMAT, what you really find is that there's only one alignment that exists, which is at the highest level, which is the mock test. But beyond that, there's very little alignment at any other level. There's very little feedback on preparation stages. Why? Because the instructors are required to go through the class at a certain time, and they don't have the tools to give you feedback. It's not that they don't want to, and I'll tell you 9 out of the 10 times they're not even trained how to do that. Okay. First of all, for those of you who've gone through a traditional test prep, do you guys see this architecture and the impact that this architecture has in this? Have you experienced this architecture overall? Getting a lot of books, studying from them, going through classes, sitting in a classroom, and then preparing, taking a mock test and figuring out, oh, I'm so far away from my target score. Right? So what this leads to is a lot of rework, a lot of frustration, and essentially I'd say about 60% of the people who go through this give up. So when we created the e-GMAT course, what we really said was you've got to really have better feedback mechanism. You've got to have closer learning or smaller learning segments. You've got to make sure that when 1,000 people go through this entire course, they don't learn to 1,000 different degrees and they get feedback to improve. So what we did was we created these nuggets, which we call as learning nuggets, where they created fantastically audiovisual concepts. Okay. And what we did was we created evaluation within concepts. So every concept has a post-assessment quiz which tells you to what degree you've learned. Then we created these application files. The sole purpose of these files is to teach you how to apply a concept in real GMAT problem. So how to apply a bunch of concepts in real GMAT problem. And then when you go through a bunch of application files, we gave qualifying exercises so that you can evaluate how you've learned. And we did this multiple times. So this is not something that you do it once. If you go through a verbal course, you'll probably do this close to 40 times. Okay, and you can really see how this is integrated over here. This is the subject verb module of the SC course. You first learn subject verb makes sense, subject verb agree in number, and so on and so forth. Then you have a concept quiz, then you have an application file, then you have a practice file. Each of these are quizzes. You get feedback in each one of them. And so you have the opportunity to self-correct at that grassroots level. Why? Because your SC ability depends on your ability in subject verb. It is a measurable metric. So overall, we provide the power in your hand. And essentially, if you think about it, the architecture of the offering is aligned with the architecture of the test. Not only at the SC level, but even at the level of what makes the SC ability. Okay. And we have given tools outside of the course such as Scholaranium where you can evaluate, correct, evaluate again and again. So what you can again really see in the entire SC course, you have more than 45 concepts, you have more than 14 applications, and you have 5 live sessions. Again, prepare properly for the right time for the first time, learn how to apply those concepts, and you have a very data-driven approach. And this is just a learning part. Scholaranium is different. What is key to learning better and faster? Make sure that you get that greater than 80% accuracy. In fact, what we really say is get to 100% accuracy in concept files. Follow the process. The application files are created in a very meticulous manner. We go through a lot of pains while creating those application files. When you do that, you look at your solution, look at our solution, figure out if you faltered, which step you faltered, and self-correct yourself. This is the place where you build that second level of core skills. A lot of people, when they come to and join our course, have already done the official questions. We ask them to do them again, and we ask them to look at our OG solutions. Now, a lot of companies say we provide OG solutions, but no one even comes close to the quality of solutions that we provide, the detail to which we provide solutions. Why? Because every question in official guide is answered using the same approach that you see in application files, which allows you to again figure out the step at which you're faltering. And make sure when you take ability quizzes at the end of every course, your level is scholarly, and make sure you reach 70% ability, not 70% accuracy, 70% ability. Use the analytics there to determine your weakness, and make sure you focus on the weak areas to eradicate that weakness. So overall, throughout this entire course, you have this granular quality control, and you have the scientific approach. The way in which we answer questions, we approach questions is super scientific. So I have a question which says, how do you choose between a live or an online course? So just to really tell you some data, about 70% of all our students choose online or on-demand courses. 30% choose live courses. So what do live courses do? Live courses provide a lot more intense feedback. When you have a live instructor, you can go back and forth. I tell people, if you like our free sessions, you're going to absolutely love our paid sessions, because it's about 3 to 4x more interaction than what you have in the free sessions. An instructor can identify why you're faltering, where you're faltering right then and there, and then give you that feedback. Okay. It allows you to stay on track. If you're someone who really needs constant motivation to stay on track, when you join a live course, you have to follow a schedule. You've got to do a certain set of prerequisites. So you are forced to stay on track over a 6-week period. And then the additional application helps cement your learning. Okay. Once again, these are the benefits of live sessions, but online live courses, both of them are complete. Verbal Online, world's most reviewed course. The world's first course on any forum to reach 500 reviews. Verbal Live, about 25 to 30 points higher score improvement than online. Okay, taught by the world's best instructors. Also, when you join a live course, you become a part of a cohort. It's not just us that you learn from; it's the other guys also who you learn from. And we've certain groups where we have thousands of our students who've created these groups. So with that, I've come towards the end of this webinar. So how should you choose? How should you evaluate a GMAT course? There are 6 key metrics that I would really look at. First of all, how complete is the course? The second thing is whether the course teaches application. How much focus do they have on teaching application? The third thing, does it give you ample practice? And is the practice questions, are they created by you or just bought from somewhere and sold to you? Because the reason why I say that is content creation is a skill, and you want to make sure that those who are giving that content to you, they have that skill. Does the company provide support? And then the last piece is, does the company have a history of proven success? When you look at e-GMAT course on these metrics, you'll find that we score really high. So with that, I've come towards the end of this webinar. GMAT, and some of the key takeaways is, when it comes to acing the GMAT, you've got to build ability, you've got to be able to apply concepts. Okay, how do you build ability? You actually build your core skills. As you build your core skills and uncover and fix the gaps in your core skills, you build ability. We did not discuss timing. A lot of people fret over timing. I would say do not. As you build your core skills, your timing improves automatically. When you come to the CR session next week, I'm going to talk about why people take longer to answer CR questions and how, as you build your core skills, your timing improves. Timing is not a skill. Timing is an outcome of improved core skills. You need to have this strategy to improve, to approach every question type. Okay. So just as a recap, GMAT score is really important now more than ever. To score high, make sure you leverage on your strengths. You spend time to overcome your weakness. Okay. Whenever you make a mistake, really important, it's because of lack of one of your core skills. Map it to that and fix it. The key to getting to that 750, one is you can study for a year, second is you can use precise data and get to that in a month and a half. Okay. Here are some of the free concepts in the e-GMAT free trial. You also have quant concepts that you can really look at. With that, guys, I want to thank you guys for attending the webinar. I hope you guys found this webinar useful. I'd like to get some feedback over here while I share the webinar, the PDF. So was this webinar useful, guys? If you can type in your answers here. Here is the course calendar for verbal and quant. Okay. At this point, I'll be happy to answer any open-ended questions that you have. And I will be sending the recording in another 45 minutes or so. Okay. So, the first question that I have, and thank you so much for the feedback. The first question that I have over here is there an accelerated learning option? You know, the beauty of our course is you decide that. I mean, ultimately you've got to get to a certain end score, and you decide how you get to it based on your current level. When you have that data, you accelerate your learning yourself. Can we join a non-live class anytime? Yes, you can join it anytime. You know, there's no start or end date. So the on-demand courses, and that's why it's called on-demand. It's dependent all on you. Net banking options, right to support. If you have personal questions, you can ask them right now over here. Yes. What is the average time a student takes to complete the online course? It varies. I would say if you're looking for a 7 to 8 point score improvement, it's about 70 to 80 hours of effort. And the reason why I put in a time in terms of hours of effort is because I have had people ace verbal in 2 weeks, or actually even a week. And I've had people who've gone in for 8 months. But when I look at the amount of time spent, it's very similar. How are we exactly supposed to use Scholaranium? Was it during the course, before the course, or after the course? A great question. So the simple answer is that you're supposed to use it once you're done with any section. So when you're done with sentence correction, use Scholaranium to evaluate what your ability is. If it's less than 70%, figure out the areas where you're weak in, and make sure you go back to the course, fix those areas, come back, evaluate the ability again using Scholaranium. So that's one use. Once you're done with all the sections, use Scholaranium again to evaluate your verbal, your quant ability. Build targets for you to figure out what you need to fix. And once you do that, it'll tell you how can you get to your target score. Look at the stuff over here to figure out how to use Scholaranium. There's a lot of confusion whether multiple attempts matter to universities or not. Some say universities look at the most recent one, others say they look at the best score. So 95% of universities look at your best score. Very simple answer. A couple of them look at your look at the number of attempts in your first and others. Harvard, for example, might do that. But 95% of universities look at your best score. Is there any age for taking the test and getting into B school? Well, most people do it in their, between 25 to 30, but a lot of folks who are in the defense services take an exam at 40. So the answer is no. Shama has a question that says, say I finished the online course yourself, is there any support? Yes, support is a super integral part of everything that we do. When you finish and when you are doing the online course, if you have any doubt, we have dedicated forums where you can post the questions. We built this architecture so that you could benefit from everyone's doubts that have been posted. And our experts respond to those. If you have a strategy question, you can write to our support team and they will respond to it. The difference between a live and an online student is the live session. I mean, you're students for us. Can you pay in INR? Yes, you can write to me at rajat@e-gmat.com, as I mentioned before, and we'll tell you how to pay using net banking. Adriel says, you mentioned that the OG bundle is must. I went through Kaplan Premier and now I'm going through Manhattan Bundle 4th edition. Do I need OG still for an e-GMAT course? Yes, I mean, I will tell you point blank that the quality of questions that Official Guide has, nothing matches that. I mean, we've tried to be as close as we can, but nothing matches that, just because the number of resources they have is way more than what we can muster. So I mean, Manhattan GMAT has good questions, but for example, in sentence correction, a lot of their questions are based on grammar rather than logic. And while that is I mean, it's necessary to know some grammar, you've got to go beyond that as well. So I would really recommend that you buy an Official Guide. Don't care, you can buy an Official Guide 13 or an OG 15. It's $10, not the $25 with OG 16 or OG 2017. That's okay. The official guides have not changed significantly. They still are testing the same things. Ramza says, where is the calendar? Ramza, the course calendar is up here. You can really see that. It should be on our site as well. So you can download the calendar for Quant and Verbal sessions. If you face a problem with the OG, how do we support for that? Same, post your questions in the internal forums. Our experts will respond to it. Only our experts respond to your questions, no one else. So, does caller name represent actual GMAT questions? No, no one gets actual GMAT questions. Caller name gives you really high quality questions created by us. How close those questions are to the actual test, they're very, very close. Can I talk about the 80-point score improvement guarantee? Yes, I can, Ramza. So fundamentally, when you buy GMAT Live Prep, you get a plus 4-point score improvement guarantee on verbal and a plus 3-point score improvement guarantee on quant. Both of them lead to typically between 70 and 90 points depending on where you are. So that's your 80 points out there. If you want to know more, let me give you a page. And most of the stuff that I'm talking about, you can actually just Google. So for example, if you Google e-GMAT score improvement guarantee, you would actually get to this page over here. So that when you do the payment through credit card, you actually pay in Indian dollars, so which is the $199. And the credit card company translates that to rupees. Usually what they do is they will use the current exchange rate and add 2% on it. And you actually are much better off that way, because when you pay using a credit card, you do not pay the sales tax to Indian government, which essentially is, I think, from what I understand, 13 to 14% currently. So paying through credit card, you save money. At what time should you plan for GMAT? I would say if you're going to apply this year, start planning for it right now. If you're going to apply next year, which was in 2017, then you have some time. Okay guys, with that, I would like to end this particular webinar. I want to thank you guys for joining me today. I hope you guys found it useful. I enjoyed conducting this webinar. I will talk to you later on.